Hi, this is Karen with Karen's Cards and More, and today we're going to make this beautiful card where we're going to do some blending, we're going to add some water, and then we're going to do some spotlight stamping. Just a different technique than I've done in a while. Just wanted to do something to show the versatility of what you can do. So let's get right into it and talk about what we're going to use to make this card. We're going to need some basic white. Our card base is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. Then we're going to need a piece of basic white that is 3 3/4 by 5. And then we're going to need another piece of basic white that is 2 by 3 1/4. Then for our mats, I'm using Highland Heather, and this piece is 5 1/4 by 4. And then we're also going to need a piece that is 2 1/4 by 3 1/2. So those are the pieces that we're going to be using for our card today. And we want to start with doing our ink blending. And the stamp sets I'm going to be using, let me show you those. We're not using any dies today, just stamp sets. We're going to be using this image, and this image from the Hand Penned Petals set. Love this set, so much you can do with it. But I didn't want to use any of these greetings, so I pulled out my Timeless Tulips set because I wanted to use this happy birthday. So those are the stamps that we're going to be using for today's card. So let's get right into the ink blending. And you know, sometimes this can seem like a daunting task if you've never done it, but I think if you start with something like this technique, it's really forgiving and it's a good way to learn. Now let me warn you to start. I do not have any of the Stampin' Up! Blending brushes yet. I'm using some old ones that I have that are cheap ones, and they're okay, but I think the Stampin' Up! Ones are going to do much better at blending. So if you don't have any stamping brushes or any blending brushes and you're getting ready to purchase those, I would consider getting a little better quality. These are cheap, and sometimes I can see the difference in the project. So I'm going to start. The inks that I'm going to be using for the blended portion, I'm going to use Blushing Bride, I'm going to use Highland Heather, and I'm going to use Gorgeous Grape. So I want to start with the Blushing Bride. So I'm just going to open this up. And every one of these is going to look different because you're never going to blend the exact same way. You're never going to do the water the exact same way. So they're always going to look different, and that's part of the fun of it. Now I just have a silicone mat down that I'm using to protect my surface, and I'm going to start off my cardstock. Because if you start right on, sometimes you can get a harsh when you first start. So I want to start off my cardstock, and I'm just lightly going in circles. You can always go over it and add more, but if you start too dark, then you have nowhere to go. And it's just a process. Now I could leave it like it is. I could stop with where I'm at right now on this pink and go somewhere else if I didn't want it any darker, but I want a darker pink. I could have started with a darker shade of pink than the Blushing Bride. That would have got me there faster. It's all in what look you're going for. So I'm just going in a swirly, kind of a swirly motion across this portion of the cardstock. And we are going to do some blending with the purple into the pink, so because we want to cover up all the white. So I'm just wanting to get some pink spread out in different places, and I like the way this is blending much better than what I had started on the other side. So okay, I like that better. Okay, and I want to come in, I think just a little in this corner. Okay, I think that's all I want to do with the pink. Now I'm going to come in with the Highland Heather. And add some of it. So I'm just getting some ink on my brush, again, starting off the cardstock and blending in the white space and over into the pink a little bit. And you want to keep that in mind when you're picking your colors, because if you get two colors that when you mix them together they turn too muddy, then that might not be what the look that you're going for. And so you want to think about that before you do that. So definitely give that a thought when you're picking your colors to use. So I'm just coming over in this corner with the Highland Heather. And then I'm going to just add a little up in this corner, because I want to save space for my Gorgeous Grape. Okay. Now you can always do the process over and over. Like once we put the water on and it dries, you can always go back and add more ink, go back and add more water, whatever you want to do to get it to the look you want. So then I'm going to come in with the Gorgeous Grape. I love the dark hue that gives to it. And I'm just going to just spot around with that. Now I could go back and add other color, you know, some more of the pink, some more of the Highland Heather, but I think I'm going to leave it just like this. Now, the next part is just really random. And I'm going to, before I do anything else, I'm going to come in with my rag and just wipe this ink up off of my surface so I don't get ink where I don't want it. Okay. I have a water bottle. I have one that's water, one that's alcohol. I just mark them so I know the difference, just a plain bottle. And I'm just going to put some water in my hand. You could do this with the mister. You're going to get a different look because it's going to be smaller droplets. So whatever look you're wanting, and I'm just going to flick this down on here. And I want kind of big drops. And I'm going to get a little more water because I want a little more water over here. Sometimes it's hard to get it where you want it. It'll go everywhere else besides where you want it. Okay, and then while that, I just give that a minute to do its thing, to activate with the ink. And then I'm just taking a paper towel and putting down on there and lifting some of the color. Now, this will change as it dries. It will definitely soften and change the look as it dries. So I'm just going to set this aside. We're going to do some other stamping, and then we're going to come back to it. And if I need to heat set it with my heat gun to dry it, we can do that. But let's go ahead and go to the inside of the card. So on the inside of the card, I'm going to be using, let me get my stamp set back out so I can show you. I'm going to be using this stem and these flowers here. So I'm going to start with doing the stem, and I'm using the Memento, Black Memento for that. And I'm just going to tap some ink. And I'm going to do one in the lower left corner. And then I'm going to do another one in the right corner. Just like that. And then for the flower portion of this, now keep in mind this is a random look. So if you like everything neat and precise, you may not like the look of this flower. Just to keep that in mind. So I'm going to come in with this, and I just try to make sure that some of the black dots are hitting some of the purple circles. So I'm just going to I really don't think there's a right and a wrong. It's wherever you like them. And it's that simple. Okay. Close that up. Now we're ready to start doing our stamping. And I would definitely recommend the Stamparatus for this, because if you need to double stamp, especially since we're going to be doing 2 layers, and you'll see what I mean by that, it would help to have your Stamparatus. So I'm going to take off my happy birthday here, and we're going to need this other flower. And I have you'll see mine has a grid in it. The Stamparatus, let me show you this while we're waiting on that to dry. The bottom looks like this with a grid. And it comes with this foam piece for when you're doing polymer, because you definitely want to stamp on foam when you're doing polymer. But there's an extra piece that you can purchase, which is the foam with the grid. So I did purchase that because I like having the grid on my foam piece. So that's something you can purchase for your Stamparatus if you should so choose. Now this is still a little damp, and I don't want it to be damp when we're stamping on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in my heat gun, and I'm just going to give it a little help drying, and then I'm going to speed that up, and then I'll be right back to get on with the stamping. Okay, so I'm just going to try to use the grid to my advantage with this. And you just want to put our inked piece, you just want to kind of try to center it in the middle of the white piece. I'm going to use my magnets to hold it down, and then I'm going to look at it and see if I think it's straight. Probably tell from the bottom, that looks pretty straight. And you want to keep in mind that we're putting a greeting underneath. So I'm going to turn it so my tape is facing the other way so I have plenty of room for my flower. Okay, so you can play with this a little bit to see exactly where you want your flower to go. And you can also look at your inked piece. Do you want it to go, if you can notice, one side has more of the bubble look than the other side, so you can decide how much of that you want under the flower and how much you want to the other side. So that's part of your decision making that you can do. I think that I'm going to do it just like this. You'll get a different look if you turn that and stamp the other way, but I think I'm going to do mine just like this. Okay, so I'm going to line that up where I want it, and then I'm just going to close the lid of my Stamparatus and pick that up. And then I'm going to come in with my black Memento ink, and I'm just going to tap to get ink on my stamp. And then I'm going to close my lid and just push down. Just press over the image, keeping in mind you've got 2 layers there. And that's why it's good to use the Stamparatus, because if it's not as dark as you want it the first time, you can always restamp. And yeah, I definitely want to restamp. So I'm just going to add more ink. And this time I have this handy dandy tool my husband made that helps me add pressure, and I want to do that on the part that's not on 2 layers, just to help that get pushed down. And I think that's good. Okay, and I'm just going to wipe off my stamp so I can take it off of my Stamparatus. And I'm going to move this magnet over because I want to be able to do my happy birthday. Now you want to keep in mind that there's going to be a mat behind there, so you don't want to get it too close because then it's going to interfere with your mat. So you do want to keep it down a little bit. Just get that straight. And I do want to say this when you're stamping, especially greetings, and I'm using the black memento for this, you don't want to push your ink pad too far down. I mean, you don't want to smush it on your greeting stamp, because if you do, you're going to get ink all over that polymer stamp, and it would be the same way with the cling stamps, and then you're going to have ink in places you don't want. So you just want to lightly tap, and you can see I'm getting ink on there just by lightly tapping. Okay, see how good coverage that is, and I didn't smash it down. And it's the same way when you close this, when you're stamping this, you don't want to come in and just press really hard on that, or you're going to smush ink in places that you're not going to be happy with. So you just want to give a little pressure, but you don't want to really mash down. And see how clean that comes out? So if you're getting images that aren't as clear as you want, those might be some things to think about. Okay, so I'm just going to, I always like to wipe off my stamps before I go on to the next step. So I'm going to bring these out of here. I'm going to get rid of the Stamparatus because we're done with it. And we're ready to start matting this and putting it together. So let's start with our smaller pieces. And I'm just going to put some Stampin' Seal on the back of this. And I'm going to bring in the mat. And you can see with this, as this dried, how it does look different. It softens, it just gives it a really neat look, okay? Now I'm gonna do the same with the big pieces. I'm gonna mat the white on the Highland Heather. Again, looking to get it straight and have an equal border all the way around. Press that down. And then we're going to be adding this to our piece. And the images should line up because of the way we stamp them. I have found with this particular image, I line up my stems first. That helps me get it where I want it, and then I can look at the flower for placement from there. But that's how I do it, is I line up the stem to help me get it in the right spot. And then from there, it's just making sure that it's straight, okay? So then I'm just gonna put some Stampin' Seal on the back of this piece. And again, I'm going to line up that stem. Just like that. We're ready to add some ribbon. So I'm going to turn this piece over, and on the upper right corner, I'm going to add some Stampin' Seal halfway down the side and halfway across the top. Because then I'm going to come in with my Gorgeous Grape ribbon, and I just want to put this at an angle. So I'm going to hold it in that corner, and I'm just going to press that into that adhesive that we have on the back. And I'm going to bring my scissors in, and I'm just going to trim this off. And I'm going to figure out how I want my angle. I think like that is how I want it. And then I'm just going to press the excess into that adhesive on the back, just like that. Okay. And then I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to just add my Stampin' Seal all across the back, and I'm going to go over that ribbon end. And I'm going to bring in my card base. And I'm going to add this. Press that down. And so I need to get that ribbon pressed a little bit more. So I'm just going to use my fingernail and just tuck that in a little bit. And that took care of that. Okay, now I'm just going to tie a bow. Now I am not the best bow tire, but I have found that if I start with smaller loops, I can usually get it to work out better than if I start with great big loops, I can usually never get it where I want it. So I'm going to start with smaller loops, and then I just keep working with it. I pull it tight, and then I shorten the bow, pull that, and then I tighten it back up. And what I'm doing is I'm holding the knot when I'm just keeping some pressure on it as I'm pulling on that. And then tighten it back up till I get the bow the size that I want it. Then I'm going to play with the tails a little bit. To get them. Okay, and then I'm just going to trim these tails. Just like that. And then I'm going to use a glue dot to attach my bow. So I'm just going to put a glue dot. See which way I like my bow. I like it that way. So I'm just going to put the glue dot on the back of my bow. And then I always check it to make sure if the glue dot's sticking like way out past my knot, I just kind of smash it a little bit so that it's smaller, so that it's not showing past the knot. And I'm just putting mine in this corner. Just like that. And then we're ready to fold this. Let me bring in my original. And as you can see, they look a lot different. This one has, I think, more of the gorgeous grape in it. The water droplets, I have more of them more closely together than I did on this one. This, I didn't put as much of the gorgeous grape on there. I kind of focused more maybe on the Highland Heather. A lot more pink maybe in this one. So it's all going to depend on how you do it. Every time you do it, you're going to get a different look. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope if you haven't tried any blending, this is a small piece, so maybe that'll be easier than doing a great big project. So I hope that you'll experiment with this, give it a try, and I'll craft with you again soon.